pal.
Hey there, this is Pete Townsend from Entrepreneurial Ventures, and welcome to Money Never Sleeps, a podcast that looks inside the head of entrepreneurs and at what makes them do what they do. This episode of Money Never Sleeps is kindly sponsored by Ireland's fintech and financial services recruitment specialist, Top Tier Recruitment. If you or a colleague need help attracting and retaining great talent for your fintech or financial services company, it is highly advisable that you build a relationship with the team at Top Tier Recruitment. You can find them at toptierrecruitment.com and tell them we sent you. This week, we talked to Gene Murphy, co-founder of the Startup Boost Global Tech Pre-Accelerator. Owen and I have both known Gene for a few years. I'm sure that a lot of our listeners in startup land have gotten to know Gene as well, as he's been ever present in the Irish startup ecosystem for a while now. We're thrilled to have Gene on for our first video cast as well, so check us out over on the Money Never Sleeps YouTube channel. For those of you new to the show, Money Never Sleeps spelled as all one word. So let's just give this episode a boost and accelerate right into this week's episode of Money Never Sleeps.
Money never sleeps, pal.
Here we go again, folks. Welcome to Money Never Sleeps. We're recording today from the home studio. We're on with Gene Murphy, co-founder of Startup Boost, a global pre-accelerator program with a mission to lead pre-seed and seed stage startups towards accelerators, investment, and revenue. Gene is also involved with Techstars Startup Week Dublin, the Natty FinTech Accelerator with Middle Game Ventures, and a big shout out to Pascal, Patrick, and Michael at Middle Game, and was previously an entrepreneur in residence at the Bank of Ireland, and also the founder of multiple businesses. But just like McGreevy used to shout, enough said. I know you guys won't get that, but I'll share it another time or even talk about it later. But welcome to the show, Gene.
Excellent. Great to be here, guys. And congrats on your first video cast.
Yes. Hopefully it works out.
Yeah. Stepping into a new age here, and just see how it goes, right? So, Gene, even with that whistle stop tour I did of your life in crime, startups, there's a personal story we want to hear there, right? So tell us, how'd you get to this exact moment in your life?
In a meandering way.
Just go for it, bro.
The best way to start. So, look, I was very lucky growing up. I grew up in an entrepreneurial family. Our family businesses, exhibitions, conferences, and publishing. I always joke with people saying the first event I went to was when I was 6 months of age, which was literally the case. It was my father's first ever exhibition in the RDS. I think one of the first trade shows, as far as I'm concerned, about 40 years ago, was the Irish Heating and Ventilation Exhibition.
Wow.
IVEX was the cutting edge technology of its day. And I was pushed around that in a stroller the night before it opened, getting a grand tour of it at 6 months of age. But that's what I grew up with. My first jobs were at the kitchen table, sticking stamps on envelopes for mail shots going out the door.
Me too.
We're kindred spirits. I was letting myself into my father's office when I was a kid to chop up old print film, because when you used to print a magazine, it was on 4 layers of print film, so we had to send ads back to editors. There's no digital files or PDFs back then. That was another one of my jobs. And the local event venue, the RDS, that was kind of like a second home growing up. So as I grew up, I was always around business. That's what we chatted about at the kitchen table, or put stamps on sales letters going out. And through all that, that's what I grew up in. Jobs in different events, got to see lots of different types of businesses, good, bad, and indifferent ones. Because a trade show could have 200-300 people, and we were in every industry you could think of. So if it was the food industry, it was different business people there. If it was fashion, it was different people there. All the way through architecture, building, you name the vertical, they were in it. And I think that's just something that has always stuck with me. Is I just absolutely love business. I love the people around it, the deals that are done, and how all that happens. And I think a natural extension of that was I'm the youngest in my family. And when I was about 24, 25, I was working in one of our magazines, and we struck upon the idea of could we go digital with them. And we ended up launching an architecture site. We launched a health and beauty site. I think I was Ireland's number one male health and beauty reporter when I was 25, mostly because at that time, I think I was on my own in that field because our editor was sick. So I took over for a month and got out of the sales and marketing that month. But learned a lot in that process. We went in to build online exhibition venues then. That was another area we thought we could do something in maybe 16, 17 years ago. And unfortunately, that was one of my first failures that I put my hand up for on that. Didn't know enough, thought I knew more than I did, had grown up in an industry. I was only speaking about this yesterday at a talk, and the running joke was that today, as we now are all online, and at Boost, we've moved all of our programs remotely. One of our biggest competitors back then that we thought was a competitor was a piece of software I've now suddenly found myself in a number of times a month. My stomach turns every time I'm in it because I'm now remembered on a daily basis, or reminded of what we could have done. Again, went through that, recession kicked in, things didn't work out. Didn't realize, I suppose, looking back on it, what I'd learned or what I knew. And we're kind of scrabbling to do things for people, make money. What could we do on our own in that respect? And I teamed up with some other people at that stage who were building websites for people. And it turns out that we'd actually learned quite a lot. Although our online magazines took 6 months to build, which you'd turn around in a weekend now with WordPress, in going through that process, learned a lot. Couldn't put the glossary of terms on it like we have today, but I'd learned a lot in that process. Skip a few years ahead on that, ended up building a little app to redeem daily deals back in the Groupon phase. Got to an accelerator, learned about that, went through that process, and again, made a mistake, tried to go from selling, business to business, straight to enterprise, thinking it was like in the click of a fingers, it was going to be the same thing. Turns out it's not. It's a lot longer, and you can run out a runway a lot faster. And I think, again, through that process, had another kind of epiphany about what do I know? Do I know much? What's happening? And I think, skipping again another amount of years forward, I think I personally just had, I remember my first day in an accelerator in the NDRC, and I was sitting at a table. I can literally remember it every time I think about it. I know where I was sitting, what I was looking at, who was sitting to my left, who was sitting to my right. I was wearing a suit primarily the next day. I think that was the last day I wore a suit.
Ever?
Mostly, except on my wedding day, a year and 9 days ago. So that was good. So that was the second suit wearing time.
Congratulations again.
Thank you very much. There may have been one or two other sporadic moments of suit inclusion. But I thought I knew quite a lot at that stage, I'd grown up in business. And again, I think the thing I keep learning is, what I don't know, and trying to push that forward. I probably am undiagnosed in having OCD and, a range of other disorders where I just get out of shape mentally if I can't start and finish something. And I think that I do like order around things. And I think that's what, we try and do with Boost, or where I am now with what I do. I love having an idea, getting that out into the market and seeing what happens with it, and completing that. And that's what I love working with startups. It feels like, when I get to chat with a startup, it feels like, there's a scrambled up Rubik's Cube in front of me. And that journey is little by little putting that together to try and, get it to an end state. Either that's their pre-seed investment, that's, a great sales deck, that's, that next step they need to go to. So that kind of brings me up to today, to literally this moment, to this second, with both of you. So I hope that journey's worked.
Yeah, that's helpful. Thank you. And I wanted to talk about Startup Boost for a bit. But do you think, in terms of your stage and what you're naturally attracted to, that obviously Startup Boost is a pre-accelerator, that's early stage, early squirrely stage, right? What's the difference for you in terms of early stage versus growth stage, right? And, why do you think you're attracted more to early stage than to growth stage?
It's a good question. I think why I like early stage is because growing up, entrepreneurship was, I thought everyone did it. I thought like that was just the norm for everyone. And I was very, very lucky, to learn from my mother and my father and my brothers. And I do think I probably got, a college level degree by the time I was 18, just in understanding how business worked and how to work around people, how to sell things, work with things, organize events. So I think those kind of things, when you're so close to it, you take it, for granted. I think what I love about, startups is how rapidly can you get someone that's brand new to entrepreneurship, who may have a phenomenal background in different areas, but I think, as we all know, I don't know if it's easier if you have no business experience beforehand, or, how you need to rewrite that kind of mental playbook around that. But what I love about early stage, to answer your question, is the ability just to get someone up into a space where they can, move forward themselves. I think after that, it's kind of, and my father said it well once, was, if you imagine, the space rockets going into space in the old days, pre SpaceX, they had this huge orange booster rockets. That, although I'm naturally attracted to anything orange, I think that, they're not the sleekest looking things in the world, but they have a certain purpose to get something very technologically advanced to a certain point, and then they break off and they're gone, and so on and so forth. And then it's down to the fine-tuned jets and all the great engineering and everything to for that mission to go on wherever it needs to. So I think it's incremental changes once it's kind of punched through the atmosphere. And I think working with early stage startups, it feels like being those orange booster rockets, on Boost. I know we'll go into more detail on this, but it's 6 weeks, it's 3 hours a week. It doesn't seem like a lot, but the impact and the change in a startup on day one to the final day, before we go to demo day, it is night and day. It's as simple as that. But to your point, at growth stage companies and later stage companies, you need the right people with the right experience. I think the area I can play a role in there is just have a good wide network, and I can recognize patterns. And sometimes it's great to be able to chat to someone and just uncover a little point that might, connect them with the right person to propel them faster.
Yep. And it's really interesting because, like I said, probably myself and Pete would be in the same boat. It's the earlier stage stuff gives you more scope. Like you said, the amount of change that you can kind of bring to an organization at that level in that short space of time is enormous. Like it can fundamentally change the business versus the later stage stuff. And probably, given your background, it's meant that you've seen so many different parts of a business to be able to have input in all of them. And that's more valuable in some respects at the earlier stage than, when they have people in those particular roles as they kind of scale.
Yeah, like there's one example I'll never forget. And whenever I see the guy, I'm always brought back on a road trip down memory lane. But it was one of our presidential candidates, and I don't know why his second name is escaping me, but he had a company called Smart Home. And, it was, I don't know, pre 2000. The idea with this was it would patch your house together pre Google Nest and mesh networks and all that kind of good stuff. So that every room was smart. Get proper connectivity everywhere, get proper TVs, music, audio, all that kind of good stuff. And I remember the first year, and no word of a lie, we had this stand that was, lovingly referred to by some people as the coffin, because it was the exact dimensions of a coffin. And it wasn't in the best of places. I mean, it was what it was. But he was there year one. And I remember him telling me the story. He'd got his friend beside him because he had this idea, and that was it. This was kind of his MVP and his customer development, I guess, to use those kind of like phrases we'd use now. And he had a fuse box, and he had like some, network connections inside it, like switches and patch cable, and it was on like a piece of wood, so it would like prop up against the stand, and that was it, and like one poster. And I think he'd gone to the expense of painting the wooden 2x4 black, so it looked a bit sleek for architects. And he would literally stand in the aisle, dragging people in to show them why this was really important, why they could charge more in their houses, or do whatever it was that they needed to do. And I remember seeing it, and over the space of maybe 4 or 5 years, he was the anchor tenant at that exhibition and the consumer exhibition. And when we went to Northern Ireland, he was the main person there. And I have to hand it to him, like, the changes on day one that you could, afford him, could be some great advice that would make a monumental impact for him to move faster. It was more season changes later in that career, like 5 years in, take on a new market, in Northern Ireland, use that exhibition to do that. Like that's a more expensive step to take. But Owen, to your point, that is a kind of later stage step to take in that respect. And again, early stage to growth stage, you use different tools at different times for different jobs.
Well, yeah, I mean, just like him stepping out into the aisle, you got to do that now as a startup. It's just instead of, stepping out into the aisle, you're stepping out into Twitter, right?
Yeah,
saying, "Hey, look at me, I'm a pretty big deal," right?
I think like the thing though is, all of us know each other going back a number of years now at this stage, and I think we're probably of a kind where we'll go to a networking event, we'll chat with people, we'll do all that, but we all had to start somewhere. I remember my mum giving out to me for being like too nervous and really pushing me as an individual to build up my confidence to go out and chat to people. And so again, if it's I remember someone recently at a thing I was involved in, a very interesting lady had said everyone needs one good person in their life at one point in time. And that person may change, sadly, it will change if it's parents over time, or it may be a mentor, maybe someone else. But I do think it's that thing, if it's that early stage person, it's all brand new to them. It's all had to, 3 old codgers like us.
Speak for yourself.
Well, yeah, I'm nearly getting into my
Bambi there in the middle.
This September. So I'm starting to feel the aches, the creaks. But joking aside, it doesn't matter what age you are going into this. When it's all brand new, it's all, pretty overwhelming. I think we're not here to do these jobs for these people. We're here to, open a door to a room that's labeled entrepreneurship and see if they stay there or they don't. If anything, I'm a gigantic biological signpost versus a metal one, to help you, get to where you need to be faster, I think.
Yeah, it's about boosting people forward, isn't it?
Boost.
No pun intended, but on that note,
perfectly dressed.
Why don't you tell us about Startup Boost? Right. And
yeah, no, 100%. So Startup Boost, interesting thing. So myself and my co-founder, Blake Caldwell, who's based over in LA, who at the moment is, I was just chatting to him earlier, based over there. We started this about 3 years ago. Prior to that, there was a pre-accelerator called Startup Next. It was part of Up Global, which was, I don't know, I want to say like 9-10 years ago, probably more. Was the originator of Startup Weekend that we all know and love nowadays, that helps introduce people to entrepreneurship. Startup Next came out of that because it was the answer to the question of what do we do next? What do we do after Startup Weekend? Back in 2015, it was bought over or acquired by Techstars. And about a year and a half later, it was retired by them. Blake and I had, run Startup Next in our own cities. I ran it for 2 years until it was retired. And both of us were of the opinion that, it played a really valid role in a community or in an ecosystem. And that's something that we wanted to not see go away. So with everyone's blessing, we set it back up. Year one, we wanted to see if we could do it. We recruited some phenomenal city directors in London, Dublin, LA, Detroit, and Toronto in our first ever one. They all ran, and we run 2 cohorts a year. So that was the first cohort. Year 2, we got to year 2, mostly to try and repeat year 1. So it wasn't a fluke. And from that, we introduced things like, online demo days, so we could increase the level of, visibility of our cohort. So they'd run their demo day, we'd record their videos, we'd go and edit it. And then from that, we get another bite of the cherry for those teams, maybe 6 weeks later online. Big demand, big interest. We got some really great investors to go to those. And year 3, this year we thought our big foray into, helping more people was going to be increasing our programs and launching a platform called BoostX with the tagline of helping any founder anywhere take the next best step in their business. It's an online community. Any founders can apply to get an invite to go to it. They get access to workshops from all our different cities. They get a community of other founders that they can chat with, curated content, perks, all these kind of great things. And then COVID struck, as it struck everyone. doesn't, distinguish between things when it hits. And about 3 weeks before we began our spring cohort, I remember walking down the street, and I was on, the phone to Blake, because we, call for about 2 hours every day. And I was walking back home, and it's like most of those things in life. You remember when something really big hits, and that was a big thing for us. And I was just at Fitzwilliam Park, and we called. And the day before, I said, "What happens if, our event venues don't want to run events? What if suddenly there's these lockdowns that people are kind of murmuring about?" And when he rang me, we'd started getting emails in on American time of venue after venue just going down like dominoes, saying, "Sorry, we can't support you." And there's nothing, it's no venue's fault. Those people still stuck by us with some great mentors and speakers, and we're very fortunate. But, we knew the writing was on the wall then. And I have to credit Blake. Absolutely love working with him. Worked around the clock, reviewed 35 different online platforms, one of which shall not be named. And
wow,
it's made that much of an impact.
35 platforms.
And it was very quick. We had this list put together, and immediately we removed, I'd say, 2/3 of them. If it was out of our budget, if we couldn't get an answer back from customer support within 24 hours, if it just was too many jumps to get to where we needed. And then the next ones, we started doing demos. In the interim period, we started rewriting workshops, playbooks, processes, started training up. We ended up making a short list of about 3 and went with a really great platform called Remo.co, with a backup of Zoom as in the background. But, we're able to run in 5 cities. Our city directors rallied to the challenge. There's a lot of lessons learned through all that. We were able to pre-accelerate 37 startups, which we'll have some news on shortly on some of the funding they've raised and some of the accelerators they've got to in the meantime. And then wrap that up with an online demo day with our partner paperstreet.vc, which we use for investor reporting for our startups. We train them on that in week 5. Yeah. But they'd gone into virtual demo days or online demo days. And again, that's probably one thing we do differently, is not run 5 demo days in 5 different cities on one day.
I can imagine.
When it's offline, we always love running everything at the same time, because it's, there's that camaraderie. But yeah, I don't know if leaping between cities in the States and from Canada to North America in 5 different bounds is the thing to do.
Yeah, I saw that Chicago, LA, New York City, Pittsburgh, and Toronto in one day.
I think
37 teams.
I ended up wrapping up with a conversation with one of our guys, Adam Hawn, who's based in Chicago, and a huge kind of mentor to me in respect of entrepreneurship ecosystems. I remember I was having a chat about 3:30 in the morning my time, but it was about 9:30 his time. And I don't think I slept till about 6:30 in the morning, and I've been up since 8. Adrenaline is pumping. Yeah. We got it done, and it was phenomenal to see the startups get the opportunity to showcase. It is different. Online to offline is different. I can't sugarcoat that. There's things we've learned, from our feedback and areas that still want to know more about, and we're researching out to improve our programs. But that was where we got to,
Okay. All right. And we talked about this a couple times on the podcast recently, Owen, didn't we, in terms of the whites of the eyes type conversation, right?
Yeah.
And I looked into a little bit further afterwards and found out that when you're connecting with somebody, your pupils subconsciously dilate. Mm-hmm. And the other person subconsciously notices that. And then subconsciously, you're connected, right? And that there's something that happens with a human connection. Now, someone got right up into the Zoom camera to me a couple of weeks ago, just to say, look, my pupils are dilating. I'm like, whatever. But how do you actually, mentor to startup, you to startup? How do you actually bridge that gap over a camera to really have an impact?
So I think that the thing we all have to kind of have our kind of hand joining exercise and say, it's not going to be the same, and trying to kind of chase that impossibility as far as I've seen yet of trying to do that. And again, look, you can say I'm biased on that because I grew up in events and that's what, I was taught since I was a kid. But online to offline are 2 different experiences. And I think, we've tried to replicate to the best of our ability that things that we did were, we opened up our Remo venue specifically for the cohort for 6 weeks. So they could use those, Remo's cool in that you can run conferences, talks through that. It has tables. Every team would have their own table, their own whiteboard. And it is a really good system, but we'd also have like one-to-many talks when it was the key speaker. The way it breaks down is every week there's a key speaker on one of our 6 pillars. There's pitch coaching, and then the final area is one-on-one mentorship. So in those areas, we could break people onto separate tables. They would chat, similar to this. We tried to do things like inviting the alumni in for an hour beforehand and an hour afterwards and just get them mixing and chatting. It's still, though, the case that I think people are wary of, not wary, but they're conscious of online. I think, if we all, admit it here, this is a super format and it's a great app that you found, and definitely bridges, a series of different areas in the gap, but we're still online. It's still being recorded. It's still, right in front for, critical feedback for hundreds of years, So how do you have those conversations? I don't have the answer to that. And it's something that, Blake and the role of Blake and I suppose, to sum it up is, our goal is to facilitate pre-accelerators. So we work with phenomenal volunteer city directors. We have a playbook we're always refining. We provide the tools for all that, so that we can reduce the burden so that they can spend more time with their teams. I don't know what the future is going to hold. I know we're going remote for the rest of the year, and until it's safe to do so, to come back. And maybe even then, maybe it'll be, a remote option, an in-person option, and a hybrid option. So again, there's a lot of lessons we've learned out of that. There's some interesting stuff happening, but I think the thing is, if anything, to use terminology I love, sadly, I believe that in COVID, with regards to that, we're in the pre-seed phase. And I don't think, I really don't think that we're going to be out of this in the next 1 to 2 years. Personally, I don't. I do think what we're going to see is much like the financial crisis. We're going to see, 12 months to 24 months later after that happened. From my opinion, is that when we started seeing that level of innovation that was spurred on by that, coming to the market. Maybe it'll be faster because tools are faster to build with now than ever before. But in saying that, I think maybe if we had this conversation again in 6 months, we may have, another round of technology. I think we've been in triage with some of the technology that we've had, like Zoom, Google Hangouts, and they've done a phenomenal job, and they've probably done more than they were designed for. But now I think we're starting to see features that are making it easier for people. So I think the answer is that there's not an answer yet, in my opinion. But again, if you find these or it comes back in, from listeners, I would absolutely love to know.
Yeah. Look, I wanted to pick up on something actually, because it's something you mentioned a good bit. Mentors, kind of a keyword that you mentioned. Who in because I'd be keen to know from your experience, who have you found as your kind of some of the mentors, and then what do you try bring as a mentor, or how much value do you see from a mentor kind of role to some of the companies then that you work with?
Yeah, I think with mentoring, it's, what we love by the end of the program is that, our teams know how to work with mentors, and they've been exposed to that, and they can understand what happens. And I think, the value of the role of a mentor is that, we're lucky that we can call each other, get advice. And, we see it that like some of our teams have never had that experience or don't have access to those networks. So I think, the importance of mentorship is, subject to, with the caveat that you've found good mentors, and they're not, dialing it in, don't know what they're doing, are not passionate about what they're doing. And we have ways that we go and find, good mentors. And again, I should say that is, I don't want to sound like some, Wizard of Oz omnipotent being, where we wave our hands and suddenly mentors pop up in all those cities. First and foremost with Boost, it's built and folds by great city directors. It's their networks they're reaching into. They know those people that are passionate. So it's again, I suppose, the people coming into those networks, one are coming in through those individuals. So they're pre-qualified in that respect because, I put a good bit of work up front with our city directors to make sure they're the right people, that they have access to those networks. And then I think from that, we get reviews and ratings on each of the startups and each of the mentors each week. So that gives us a good idea of that. And again, our teams are good and vocal, and that'll pop up quite quickly. So again, we rely more online now on those because you don't have the ability to walk around a room and spot people and see how they're doing. So in answering that, that's our process for it. What's the importance of mentors? I don't know. I think a good mentor is someone who's incredibly passionate about an area they're in. And they know that if they're chatting with someone who is excited or is looking at, is excited about, something new that they can do, disrupt whatever, word that you want to do, you're most comfortable using, they're going to learn something in the process. Whenever I love working with startups because I get to learn about new technologies, new ways they're doing things. Why are they doing it this way? It's one thing to get it from the news or try and get it from Hacker News or Twitter or whatever it is. It's another thing to be able to have a conversation that goes both ways. And if I've been able to help someone, I know that I can rely on them for help in the future as well. So I think a mentor is a perennial learner. I think it's different to a coach, but and that's fine. And and the mentor can be a coach, and a coach can be a mentor. I think it is about you want to give something, and then by doing that, you get something back because there has to be some exchange in some way, shape, or form, even if it's in the future, not necessarily right now. But I hope that kind of is kind of a good insight into my view on mentorship.
And who have you seen? Who's been your kind of mentor, or you've probably had different ones over the years in terms of as you've been going through and working on different things?
Yeah, I definitely have. I mean, look, as a kid growing up, I was 15, 16 years younger than both my brothers. So, I had 4 mentors in the house: mum, dad, my brother Alan, and my brother Jared, and they all taught me lots of different things. I think, moving into college, our head of our student union was a phenomenal lawyer nowadays. But she, was Jane McGuire. I always remember she was a big influence on me, got me involved in that, got to be president there, got to do some really good stuff. I think like every year or two, I've always gone to, there's been another mentor there for me. And again, I suppose, even my co-founder, years ago, Jade Ellison O'Connor, when we built Redeem and Get together, and we built websites together, and we traveled into some different companies together, always learn from her, on a number of different aspects and areas. I think, as I said earlier, I think there's different mentors at different times.
Yeah.
And I think you can always, depending on what you need at that time or what you want to learn, there's always going to be someone that can mentor you in one way, shape, or form. I'm lucky nowadays. I get, you mentioned them earlier, Pascal, Michael, and Patrick, the guys in Middle Game Ventures, do get to learn a lot from them. That's one of the reasons why, it's great to have the opportunity to work on Natafin with them, is that there's some areas there that I don't have an understanding of or learning on. And, I can learn from that. And equally, I think if you pair with a good co-founder that's different to you, there's, it's going to be extra work, but I think it's yin and yang, day and night, on and off. You will learn something in the process of switching between one and the other. So again, by giving you a laundry list of mentors, I think it's like that professor from UCD said at that event was, everyone needs one good adult in their life at one point in time. At different points in time, I think is what she was meaning, or what I've taken from it. And again, I hope that answers that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And do you find yourself kind of continuing in an informal mentorship role for some of the alums of the program?
Yeah, we're trying to. I mean, one of the, an asset to us is our alumni, because they're chatting with other people. We hope that, on Boost, I should say it's no fee charge, no equity taken, and because it's at that pre-accelerator phase. What we want people to be able to do is to, instill their learnings in others as well. That's the benefit I got. And I think that's kind of what was, born from my time at NDRC. Learned a lot there. Really great alumni from that. But, what we do, it was tough to try and do that because it's it's as a volunteer based program. It's a lot to ask, I feel anyway. Our city directors to be actively, mentoring people. Post program, Blake and I run office hours once a month for BoostX members, and then also separately for our alumni.
Okay.
Inside that platform, there's a specific area that's private only for alumni, where they get access to their alumni perks, which are a little different to other perks. They get access to different information that's in there, and that's one thing that we're working on. And we also are going to be chatting with our alumni about the ability for them to be able to give back into that community, and either share their story in a podcast about their journey, or actively keep an eye on cohorts of our BoostX members, because we ask members every month, what's a big rock in your way? And by getting those questions, we can see how we target our content or curate our content and actively listen to that audience. And again, that's only in its infancy, but that's something where we want to bring the alumni back in. And again, so we'll be able to support them in a much better way using online tools, and then also help them reflect their learnings back into a community. So it's not self-perpetuating, but it is getting a wide kind of coverage or shield of knowledge that's been able to help all those different companies.
And do you think is it a natural personality trait? Because like we had chatted there on Monday for about an hour, and we were chatting away, and I was bouncing ideas, and you kind of naturally, I think, like to help and give guidance and kind of mentor where you can. Is that just?
I'm terrible with real world Rubik's cubes, but I love your Rubik's cubes that you present. I think it's a personality trait, and I think it's a good thing and a bad thing. And I learned that about myself over the past, number of years, is that I'm driven to find solutions to problems. And I really, really enjoy it. And I think it can, look, as you can all imagine where I'm going with this, if you're always looking for solutions to problems, sometimes people just want to chat and listen. So I can be an egregious bore sometimes, or very frustrating. When someone's telling me they don't want my help, but they want me to listen. So, and that's something I need to also dial back on, because again, you can spend forever trying to help people, and not get any of your own stuff done. But look, I always do enjoy, obviously always love our conversations. But it is exciting when, people are working on something and it's just that passion that's there. I don't know, in the future we'll have, like that, that Rowdy Roddy Piper movie, They Live. And you'll be able to put these specs on, and you'll be able to see the incarnation of entrepreneur passion popping off people. Maybe that's a Magic Leap thing. They've got that new CEO.
Yeah, it could be.
So maybe that's an app. Maybe we should do that.
I think so. No, I'm totally intrigued by all of this, because I just started doing some mentorship recently for Enterprise Ireland, Owen.
Excellent.
Of all organizations. Yeah. So, and it's going well and I'm enjoying it. But one of them said to me, you're the first mentor that I've had that listens more than you talk. Right.
Interesting.
Which and this person was new to the mentorship program, as was I, Owen. So no slight there. But anyway, what I found is that the more you get to know people, the harder it is just to listen, because you get so comfortable with them, and you know them, and you want to kind of like use that knowledge of their personality to kind of steer them in the right direction, and probably perhaps oversteer sometimes. And that it takes real discipline. And I did this with somebody about a year ago that I knew really well, where it was like I had handcuffs on by just asking questions, and not making statements. Mm-hmm. And every question followed another question, like the 5 whys that you do in, product development. Trying to do that when you're mentoring somebody, it is so hard. And that's where it kind of spills over into coaching a bit, that Paul Smith talks about quite a bit. So do you find that at all, that the more you get to know somebody, the more likely you are to talk rather than to listen? Is that a thing?
I'm obviously held back by the fact that I'm Irish, so we'll end up going into a meeting and then chatting for 55 minutes about absolutely nothing, and then have this mad dash at the end, completely exasperated, trying to actually figure out what the business is. I remember years ago, I was working in the Golden Pages, and I brought our CEO, a really great guy, Carl. Again, like all these people, like, had a great call with him about 2 or 3 weeks ago, catching up, hadn't spoken in a year. Again, another, to your point earlier on, another mentor in that respect, and just catching up on where I was and getting his advice. And I remember this lady sat down, I think she was from Eventbrite when they were opening up here. And, we sat down and, I thought there'd be like some really great way for us all to work together. And I remember the minute we sat down, within like 30 seconds, she turned around and said, okay, so why are we all here? What's the business we can do? And we were all flabbergasted saying, well, I thought we were going to have a great chat. And then like have this mad dash in the last 5 minutes. So I think, to your point, and I've obviously completely illustrated it here, look, it's a tough one. I think, look, if you're noticing that about yourself, I think that shows, a good level of kind of self-awareness, what's important for that company, because, time is the resource that we all jokingly say is most important, but actually is, and we never have enough of it, and we can't create any more of it. I think I always say with mentorship, it's kind of like your Dr. Fraser Crane, and, the person has the answers there, and you have to like help them find the questions to get them out. And I think
Totally.
I think it can be like, you can have some really brutal mentorship sessions sometimes where, if someone's coming back asking the same thing 3 times after, over a number of weeks, either am I not making the impact? Are they finding new things to do? Are they not, prioritizing? So I think as a mentor, the more you mentor, and the more seriously you take yourself, the more time you're going to put into improving that. I mean, mentoring at phase 1, I have 2 emails in today from people that reached out through LinkedIn. And again, my question now to everyone is, I'm happy to take the call. What's the one question you want to ask? And just, I want to go to that prepared, because I don't want to let them down. I don't want to like give someone, like I always say, like obviously all chats are still, the person has to live and die by their own choices, but I don't want to be messing someone around. I just don't. I know how frail business can be, especially, in the early stages where it's minute to minute. So I do think, to your point, there's different phases of mentorship. And I think being self-aware of, this is someone's incredibly important time on both sides of the table, that neither should come unprepared to it.
Yeah, like I had a chat just yesterday with a founder where I wish I could have had a do-over, right? I just flubbed because I was probably trying to overlay way too many of, thoughts of what I would do with the situation instead of figuring out what was the right thing for that founder to do at that point in time, right? So I said, listen, give me a call tomorrow and we'll talk about it again.
Yeah. And sometimes it is.
To get that do-over.
Yeah, but just to take the kind of time out and come back to it. I remember Conor Murphy had said, I was reading some tweets on, it was about fundraising a few years back when he was MD at Techstars in Berlin. And was it a talk? He was saying there's one interesting one where it was about, if you're fundraising, you should set up a wiki about the questions you're being asked and share that with your company so everyone can learn, the pressure under the questions you're being asked, what people are thinking of the product, what people are thinking of the market. I thought that was very smart. And he also made a really good point was, we're always trying to have the best side out. And, trying to answer things in a knee-jerk reaction, which I've been, I can put my hands up and say I've done. I felt like an absolute idiot afterwards. And, you don't feel you can come back from that. And just taking the time out to be able to say, let me come back to you on that, and just and taking that breather out. So I completely agree with you on that. I'll always get it.
Like I said, sometimes due to your relationship with somebody, if you know them so well that it's like you just go, right?
Yeah. No, you're completely right. You're completely right. I do agree with you on that.
All right, guys, we could probably chat for hours. I mean, I don't know how long we're on yet, Peter. How long are we recording?
We're at about 42 minutes.
Easily. Shajeen, we did that the other day on a call. We chatted and like at the last 5 minutes, it's like, was there anything specific?
Oh my God. Have you guys met Rory Guinan from Endeavor yet?
No.
I think so.
No, shout out to Rory. Like, I've had 2 meetings with him that were both scheduled for a half hour, and like 90 minutes later, we're like still going. And then he introduced me to Faye Walsh-Drouillard from Wake Up Capital. And like the same thing started happening. So we're going to get her on the podcast as well and see how things go with that conversation.
Well,
but
I have two questions. First one, I suppose, is, what's the next six months look like? I won't say 12 months because God only knows what that means for any of us. But, what's the next 6 months for Gene in Gene's world? And then I have a separate question for after.
I like it to be called G-Town.
Fair enough.
But no, I'm kidding. Gene World is fine. But next 6 months ahead, keep the best side out, stay indoors, wash your hands. I think it's a repeat of the first 6 months of the year. With Boost, I think we're going to be coming up on our biggest amount of programs yet. Applications are launching 20th of July. We've got Global Investor Day, 27th of July, which is going to be all of our teams from the spring cohort, one day, one place, one pitch. We are some exciting stuff. We have our first ever Vancouver program. We're in Newcastle as well in fall in the northeast of England. And our first ever new continent. We're going to, we have two programs in Africa, one in Zambia and one in Kenya. So that's very exciting. Our goal is to add 5 more cities till we hit a kind of upper limit. We've had 141 cities reach out over the last 3 years.
Wow.
We're kind of at about 11, 12 now. And it was a slow start for us. We wanted to make sure we could do it the right way and wouldn't let people down. We're getting more automated. That's getting better. So on our programs for fall, getting ready for those now. That's going to be exciting. That's a lot of work. We've got Boost X is going to be getting bigger and bigger. So we're going to be opening up that more and more out of our beta. So that's exciting. And personally, I just try and spend a little bit more time with the family, because I think that's one of the dangers I've definitely succumbed to is in the Bagot Belfry here. I've converted a spare room to a home office / YouTube influencer channel, although I'm quite close to it. But, in saying that, it's great we're getting through an awful lot, but need to be able to just manage my time more. I heard a good one today. It was work-life integration, because it shouldn't be a balance. It shouldn't be one fighting against the other for balance.
Oh, yeah.
A certain way. So that's the second time I've listened to that podcast. So I'm going to listen to it again tomorrow and see what else I can take from that. So yeah, big things going on with Boost. Very excited about that. And then on top of that, we're going to have Nadafin back for the fall. So that's going to be exciting. So working with some really good teams there. We'll be reaching out to you guys. We'll have more info on that soon. But yeah, making a big impact there as well. So it's going to be exciting with Middle Game Ventures. Definitely want to watch.
Brilliant. And my last question, which we always use to wrap it up, tell us something people wouldn't expect to know about you.
Well, I kind of inferred it earlier when I was Ireland's #1 male health and beauty reporter. I'm still convinced I was the only one back then. I remember part of the job was going out to see different launches of different salons, and it was a website for salon owners. It was called ssh.ie, Salon Spas and Health. I loved it. It was a great business. Just didn't put enough focus onto it, because we had that, the online exhibition venue. We had Archie Expo. Again, I think very timely. But I remember this new IPL machine was coming. I still have the terminology, and the minute they saw me, they were like, you have to try out this new machine. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. Let's go. And I remember the lady was, running this, it fires like water and salt at your face, remove a layer of skin. She said, it hurts a little bit. And she said, well, haven't really tested this out yet. So why we dial it up to 10 and see what happens. So that was exciting. So that anyone knew that I nearly had most of my face removed at one stage in the pursuit of great journalism in the salon, spa, and health industry.
Wow. We are amongst greatness, Owen.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
Awesome. All right. Well, Gene, thanks so much for coming on the
thank you
show.
very much.
It's great to have you here on our very first video
Hope that was good.
podcast.
I think you deserve a round of applause for your first ever video.
Hey.
Love it.
Master of the sound effects as well. Brilliant. Gene, thanks so much, and we'll catch up with you soon, buddy.
See you soon, guys.
Good luck.
Money never sleeps, pal.
That does it for this week, folks, and thanks to Gene for opening up his mind to help us figure out why he does what he does. Links and show notes for this episode are on moneyneversleeps.ie, so check us out online, and you can subscribe to our newsletter on moneyneversleeps.substack.com. Remember, if you or a colleague need help attracting or retaining great talent for your fintech or financial services company, it is highly advisable that you build a relationship with a team at Top Tier Recruitment as they really know their stuff. You can find them at toptierrecruitment.com and tell them we sent you. Also, thanks to Conan Brophy from Create Sound for editing this podcast. Finally, till next time, thanks for listening and for watching. See ya!